Hello and welcome to Café New Canadians. This is our virtual event series where we chat with experts and immigrants about issues and matters that are important to them, to their new journey in Canada. We bring you advice to help you reach your life and career goals. So today we're going to be talking about financial tips and giving financial do's and don'ts to newcomers in Canada, from banking to filing taxes to savings to spending wisely. And our guests are going to come here to cover all of that and will be joining us virtually. Before I welcome my panelists, let's quickly introduce ourselves and what we do here at Café New Canadians. We are brought to you by New Canadians, which is a television and web-based series. We profile successful immigrants and bring you advice and useful resources on employment, settlement, education, personal development, and a lot more. And you can follow our content on our website, our YouTube channel. We also air nationally on Omni Television on those channels across those times. And do follow us there. And of course, share your thoughts, share your questions, and the kind of topics you want us to cover. Use the hashtag We Are New Canadians because we are all Canadians and proudly New Canadians as well. So use that hashtag and follow us and join the conversation. I'm your host, Vasudha Sharma. And without further ado, I want to welcome our experts this evening, Sandip Chaudhury, Head of Customer Growth and International Banking at HSBC. We have Kerry, Molitor, immigration consultant who regularly shares money saving tips for newcomers. And we also have Manish Agarwal, CPA, finance and accounting professional. Sandip, Kerry, and Manish, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
Welcome.
So today we're going to talk about establishing yourself financially in Canada. And a quick reminder to all our viewers joining us today, send in your questions. There's a question tab on Zoom. Type in your questions there. And all of you joining us live on YouTube, you have the option to send your questions there in the chat box as well. So as I get into the conversation with our guests, listen to those answers and share your questions, which I'll soon take up with our guests. So starting with Sandip, I think the first pit stop that any newcomer makes in Canada is to head to a bank and open their bank account. So what are the basics of getting started? And because the system could seem very overwhelming to newcomers because it's probably very different from where they come from. So what are their key considerations?
Well, that's a very interesting question, Vasudha, and thank you for having me here. And myself being a newcomer myself, not too many years back, I think it kind of resonates with all of us in terms of how newcomers goes through, especially from a banking perspective. Now, I would say that it is not only just about coming into Canada and then opening a bank account. There's also a possibility of a lot of people who would like to have a bank account even before they come in. And there are options in Canada for quite a few number of banks, which does give that access, where customers can avail a banking account before they come in here. There are also programs like government programs like student GIC program, where students are actually supposed to open a bank account to be able to get a fast track visa. So Canadian government has been very supportive of that program, and that also includes banking, and there are quite a few number of financial institutions in Canada who partners that. Coming to banking from a newcomer point of view, the very basic difference, I would say, is in Canada, we have the basic account as checking accounts and savings accounts. Most of the other parts of the world doesn't have anything called a checking account. It's always a savings account and a current account. So a checking account is something different. It is a transactional account. It generally doesn't pay any interest, and it also has some charges depending on what kind of balances you're putting into it. So I think the very first thing that any newcomer needs to keep in mind for a bank would definitely be obviously the proximity of the bank to their homes or their work area. If it is close by, it is better. We have to remember that in Canada, though the population is very small, it's only 35 million people, 37 million people. But between all the banks, there are almost 85 financial institutions in this country. And among the banks, among the top seven, top 10 banks, there are close to 7,000 to 8,000 branches. So branches per 100 people or 100,000 people is pretty high. So you have options to look into, but the few things that needs to keep in mind is obviously the proximity of the bank, understanding which bank has services which are more targeted towards the newcomer. So does the bank acknowledge newcomers and provide offers, provide programs to support a newcomer in their journey? And then also a very important one is back home connection. So if that bank does have a back home connection, that can also be added advantage, because a lot of time we know that newcomers comes in when they had already been settled in their home country, and then they have to send money back home, and they have to still maintain some of their obligations in their home country. So that could also be one of the other piece of information that they need to keep in mind. And on top of all this, I think it's all about knowing the banking advisors, the bank where your service is better, where you find more people giving you advice and talking to you more friendly, understanding what a newcomer is, what a newcomer is going through. I would say these are the 3 4 things which a newcomer should keep in mind while going for a bank account as such.
So, with what kind of expectations should they go in, and how should they prepare themselves for this first big milestone in their financial life in Canada? Any documents they should prepare? Any kind of proofs they should go with?
I, Mostly all the banks in Canada, they require 2 pieces of ID to be able to. And for a newcomer, I think the passport makes a lot of sense to start with. And then there could be an additional piece like your credit card or a debit card or any other ID that you're carrying, which can work. Uh, and the most important thing is that you need to learn to ask questions. Don't expect, because this is not the same country from where you're coming from. Banking could be very different. You could have done banking in your home country, but the way banking is done in your home country could be very different than how it is done here. So my recommendation to all newcomers would be, please do your research. This is a country which is a do-it-yourself country. So do your research, understand what the options are, knock to the doors of the bank that is closer to you, or if you have heard about that which bank is providing good newcomer services, newcomer programs, newcomer offers, go to them, have a chat. You don't have to decide on somebody right at the beginning, but just do your research to go there and ask the right questions. Try to find out, because if you'll be surprised to know that there are quite a few number of organizations, number of banks, which provides a lot of very interesting newcomer programs in this country. So the ID part is very basic logistics, but I think what is more important is asking the question, understanding your family's needs, and then putting it in front of the advisor so that the advisor can guide you accordingly.
The next big concept that every newcomer is presented with is your credit score, your credit history. And just like you struggle to build a job history to get your first job, credit score is the other big piece. And I want to come to even Manish on this question before I go on to spending with Kerry. But very quickly with you, Sandip, can you briefly explain this concept to our newcomer audience, and why is this important, a credit score?
Yeah, so for this, this part of the world, this is a spending country. This is the spending part of the world. So it is all about consumerism, and it is all about how you spend. As much you spend, the economy grows as much. So everything is based on your spending, and your spending habit shows what kind of discipline you have. The credit score is basically nothing but a score which is calculated based on your behavior on credit products. What does that help you with? It helps you to first of all establish yourself in this country as a diligent and as somebody who is prudent in their financial decisions. Why it takes a long way? Because based on that credit score, a lot of decisions happens in your life, including your biggest investment, which is probably going to be your house, your home. So your mortgages, your ability to buy a car, your ability to take other loans, your ability to take an education loan, everything that requires you to build yourself in a country, credit history and credit score plays a very, very critical role in that. And it is not about big things, but it's about smaller things. And to just keep the habit and keep the behavior right is what is more important. And that is where the credit score builds up, and it as high it goes, as better for you. But it's not required to, a lot of people think that, oh, if I don't spend, then my credit score will go up. Then no, it's not that way. It's about the behavior. So the transaction has to happen, because until and unless you spend, you transact, there's no way to prove that do you have the tenacity to pay back? Do you believe in paying back in time? Do you really keep it in mind? It's a discipline, it's an approach, and the principle of your behavior is what is more monitored in this process.
Okay, excellent. That was very insightful. Manish, coming to you now, as Sandip just explained what the concept of credit scores and building your credit history is, what are some of the big mistakes that newcomers often make that you always advise them against? And how do you get to building a good credit history?
See, the first point which I want to tell everybody is use a good credit, have a credit card as soon as possible. That is one of the most important things. Most people keep spending with their debit card and they think that I don't want to go into credit, but they don't understand that this country, everything is credit. The sooner you build it, the better it is. Now, there is no point delaying, and especially there is a rewards attached to it when you go through the credit. So the credit is all about how you, as Sandeep said, is all about how you manage the credit, how you pay back on time. Even I would suggest that somebody new, brand new, he should make automatic payment from his bank account set up so that it never documents that the guy delayed even one penny. So the minimum should go regardless from his bank account. It should be automatic. The time you get the credit card, one should set up that part automatically so that on your history, it never shows that. Number two, keep on spending, even if it's a small coffee, even if it is a small expense, keep on spending by credit card, pay timely bills. You can have a Rogers, like a connection, postpaid connection. You should be paying your cell phone, you should be paying your cable, everything through the credit card. Sometimes some utility companies also allow to pay through credit card, even parking, like the least possible thing one can think. There are two benefits to it. One, your credit goes up. Second, there is a tracking. Something happens, there is a tracking. You can go back and see which day you were where, what you were doing. And then there is a protection part. If there is a fraud, the credit card company is there to protect you. If you spend from your debit card, there is no protection. The money is gone. Then you are running after banks to reimburse you, and you are proving that this was a fraud. If it was a credit card, you simply dispute the transaction, they will take care of it. But if it's a debit card, you are on the hook. So these are some of the things.
Kerry, coming to you, we have our two financial experts talking about the virtues of establishing good credit by showing that you can spend and then pay it back. But we also now need to be mindful about the limited budgets that newcomers come in with. They are relying on their savings. So how should they spend wisely at the same time saving money? What are some of those smart choices they can make that you regularly advise your community of newcomers?
Sure. So if there's anything that I like more than immigration, it's shopping. And with the shopping, there's a certain lifestyle that people are used to in their home countries. And when they come to Canada, they may find that maintaining that lifestyle is much more expensive here than what they're used to. So I'm going to give you a couple tips about how you can get things in Canada to have a lifestyle that you're comfortable with for a lot less. One of the main ways to do that is to start out with buying things secondhand. And I know that that's not common in some cultures, but it really can make a difference financially for newcomers, especially for large purchases, things like furniture or a vehicle or anything along those lines. Because you don't need to start with the best of the best. You just need to start with something sit on or to wear, right? And I know that intuitively it makes sense to buy something that you're going to have forever, but it makes a lot more sense to make that purchase when you do have an income that will support it. So some of the things that I suggest to my clients in terms of saving money, particularly in terms of vehicles, is buying a used vehicle. So studies have shown that the value of a vehicle drops about 20% as soon as you drive it off the dealer's lot, and another 10% after the first year. So why don't you let somebody else drive it off the lot and then get the savings from it? So for example, a car that's $30,000 today is only going to be worth $20,000 next year. And is it really going to make a big difference to you to have a 1-year-old model compared to a brand new model? Also, the insurance costs are often lower for older cars because their value has depreciated. Another thing that I suggest people buy used are clothing and shoes for children. And that's because the children will outgrow them very quickly. And really, there's very little need for children to have, top of the line clothes and shoes for most of the things that they'll be doing. But also for adults, I recommend buying secondhand designer clothing. So there are a lot of stores called consignment stores, and I can provide a list to New Canadians that they can send out as a follow-up. But what consignment stores do is buy good quality, sometimes children, but usually adult designer clothing, and it's as good as new. Somebody's bought it thinking they're going to lose weight, they're going to fit into it, they never do. And so they sell it, and then the consignment store will resell it, usually brand new condition at a savings. Other things you can also look at are online classified ads. We have things like Kijiji, Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace. There are some secondhand shops that sell donated goods instead of things that are consigned for sale. So for that, we have things like the Salvation Army or Value Village. We also have online ways to save money, including things like eBay, which you may be familiar with from your home country. eBay has some very good deals if you have the patience to look for it. There is also a website that's very good called Retail Me Not. And if you want to go for the Canadian version, and what it will give you is coupon codes. So, when you're going and you're making an online purchase, it says, do you have a coupon code? A lot of people don't know what that is. And really, it's a way for retailers to track how you heard about them. So for example, if you see an ad, say on New Canadians, they may say, use the coupon code New Canadians for a discount. And then you type, New Canadians in when you're making your purchase, and you get your 10, 20, 30% off your purchase. But if you go to Retail Me Not, it will actually give you a list of coupon codes for various businesses. So you don't have to hunt around, and you can save a lot of money, sometimes up to 50%. Using these coupon codes that are listed at Retail Me Not. There is also another site called Bargain Moose. And for those of you who are a little bit familiar with Canadian wildlife, you'll know the moose is one of our big animals. So it's called Bargain Moose. And Bargain Moose has a newsletter, and they'll send you sales that are going on, as well as relevant coupon codes. So there are a couple ways that you can save money. By buying secondhand, by buying auctions, buying through classified sites, and taking advantage of the coupon codes.
Excellent tips there, Kerry. Thank you so much. Manish, at some point, the dreaded word taxes will come up in the year, and a first-time immigrant, a newcomer, will have to face that big axe. How do they get started? What do they do? What do they need to know?
See, the first rule for everybody who ever come to Canada, they have to file the first year tax return, because nobody comes on January 1. Whenever people come into this country, there is always an income government wants to know, which is from the home country. Now, it could be anything. There is no tax because you were not resident in Canada for that part. So first and foremost, most important is to declare that income. for yourself, for your spouse. So that part often people struggle with, and they keep wondering about the currency, the exchange rate, all those things. But that is the most important thing, because the first year tax return determines, are you going to get a GST credit? Is there any benefit coming if you have a family, the kids? What are the government sponsored kind of money you will be getting? So the first year tax return plays a very important role, and often people try to find the cheapest way to get it done, and sometimes the cheapest is not the best. So it works against them, and the CRA keeps on asking information as a follow up. So first thing people have to do is figure out this income from back home for that period and do a proper first year tax return, because then next year onwards the life is easy, things start building, and CRA has your nice profile.
And how straightforward or complex is this process to file your first tax return in your first year?
Basically, we have to do little bit research, in the sense because the income was in currency other than Canadian dollar, so everybody has to make a little bit effort and determine the correct income back home. And then obviously either they can use a CPA, or then there are a lot of free resources online which they can use, and then figure out that part. The submission is first year is little bit difficult, because the CPA has to set up their profile in the tax software. So sometimes it is better to go through a professional, do the first year taxes right, rather than experimenting yourself, because there are a lot of uncommon words which you don't know. And of course, the government allows certain income as a tax-free income. So everybody get a basic personal amount, which is tax-free. So the remaining part of the year, if you did make some income, then one has to know that up to certain amount is tax-free, and you are only going to pay the tax on the remainder. So these are the few important things. You have to begin it right, so you don't have a painful experience later.
Perfect. Beginning it right. Sandip, a lot of terms like TFSAs, RRSPs, and the kids plan, all of those get thrown at newcomers, and often a lot of them are confused whether it's too early for them to get into those. Do they wait it out, establish a nest egg, a wealth of savings, and then it's wise for them to get into it? Is there a right time to start these savings plans? What's your take on that?
See, I'll relate to my own experience, and it's been a learning lesson for me. I can tell you, because I was a banker back home, and when I came in, a lot of newcomers comes in with the plan that they will come here and stay here for 3 years and then go back. A lot of people come in with that mindset, especially if they're coming in after 10, 12 years of experience. As Kerry was talking about, a lot of them struggle to kind of cope with the lifestyle that they already had. And a lot of them think that, they'll stay here for 3, 4 years. They're coming in for their kids and then they will go back. And because of which, a lot of them do not decide on the investment pieces, because they think it's a long-term thing. They're not sure they're going to stay here or not. And I think that's a very big mistake, I would say. And I can tell you from my personal experience on that. Because as Manish was talking about, there are so many ways the government of Canada helps somebody to build their wealth through different programs like RRSPs, as you mentioned, TFSs, as you mentioned, RESP for kids education. Immigrants comes here most of the time for their kids' education and for their kids' life. So I always believe that it is better to start as early as you can, because on compounding basis, when your returns grow, as early you start, it's better. So if you're already somebody 10, 12 years experience and you're coming here, you're already 30, 32, 33, then you don't want to lose the 10 years that you've already lost. However, what is also important is start small. So you don't have to start big. You don't have to really put something big on the table right at the beginning. Start small, look at your priorities. Look at and a lot of time, as Manish mentioned, when you file your taxes, you would also know that whether government grants are coming in for your kids and whichever way, right? So you can really plan that up and prioritize accordingly. You don't have to really go overboard right at the beginning, but start small. And if you start small and have the right advisor, you speak to the right people at the bank, right advisors, understand what it is, and then take a call. But my recommendation would be don't waste your time. You have taken a big decision of moving in country, it's not a small one, but time flies. So it's better that you start small, understand what you're trying to get into, and you will see it all pays back in returns as much time you give it.
I'm often, when I look out for financial expert tips online, the power of compound growth often comes up as a concept, and probably in other countries, savings interest rates are quite high, but that's not the case in North America or Canada. And so, compound savings are your best friend.
Absolutely, and you will be surprised to know that I would recommend that go to Google and check out compounding calculators. You would be surprised to know because a lot of time what happens is when you're coming from countries where the currencies are bigger, right, but lesser valued, you're looking at zeros and then trying to figure out how big or small it is. But when you're dealing with a Canadian dollar, which is a much higher, stronger currency, even a 5% return on compounding basis, you'd be surprised to see what that number looks like when you do a 5% return on it and put it up for 15, 20 years, where it goes. It is important because in this country, $100. So when you move from a different country, I can tell you this because I had that same issue because you're coming from a country where you're used to 10,000s and 50,000 and 100,000s in your day-to-day stuff. And when you suddenly come here and you're talking about $100 and $200 and $50, it feels like, oh, this is very small. It doesn't make any sense, but it's not because you need to remember that your $100 is your 5,000. Your $1,000 is your 50,000. So lot of time you miss that. And that's why you start always talking about, oh, my money is to grow there at 13%, 14%. But that's not the issue with because your currency is a much higher value currency. And I can tell you, I'm a banker for the last 19, 20 years, 10 years in India, 10 years here, 13 years here. But I can tell you that every day it amazes me when I do the compounding piece and try to figure out. And especially if you're a new immigrant in your 30s, I would very strongly recommend that don't even miss an opportunity of putting $50 aside, $25 aside, $100 aside. You might think it is very small, but it is not. It adds up, and when it adds up, it would surprise you.
I think this conversation is going to dampen a lot of spirits a day before Black Friday when we're all looking at deals to shop online. Um, but coming to you, Kerry, in your work as an immigration consultant, what kind of concerns have you heard from the people that you counsel? Any that are money related?
A lot of times the concerns from my clients come from, do we have enough money to actually settle in Canada? And what I see is they look at the government numbers that provided by the Canadian government for settlement funds, and they say, yes, we have enough to live in Canada. Well, it's very different living in Toronto or living in the Northwest Territories or living in a tiny town in Manitoba or wherever you are. The cost of living varies greatly. The government number is just a guide. So people, I would say it's an absolute minimum, whatever the government number is for your family size, that you have more money than that when you come, because people do find jobs when they come to Canada, but it takes a while because they don't have the network that they had back home. And so I think it's important to bring as much money as possible and to spend it as frugally as possible once they're here. There was also something else that I wanted to bring up as well in terms of saving money once you're here. Each of the provinces has their own healthcare system. And Ontario, their healthcare system is under a name called Trillium. And even people born in Canada are not aware that Trillium has a plan for people who can't afford expensive prescription drugs. So before I was talking about all the fun stuff, now we get to the more important things. Trillium is based on the income that the family earns, and that's based on the tax return of the previous year. So filing taxes is very important for the reasons we've heard, but also for qualifying for government assistance moving forward. So with Trillium, they come up with a deductible based on your previous year's income, and you only pay that deductible, and then the government pays the rest of your prescription drug costs for the quarter. So it's split up into different quarters. So for example, a family with an income of $30,000 for the year would only have to spend $1,200 on prescription drugs before the government pays the rest. And so depending on what type of medical condition you have or develop once you're here, it could be mean savings of many, many thousands of dollars to go through the Trillium drug plan. Like I said, the government doesn't want people to know about it, so it's hard to learn. It's more of a word of mouth thing, but if you Google it, you will find information, and it does help a lot of people significantly.
So there are lots of government supports that are put in place to help newcomers. Manish, some newcomers want to set up their own business. They're entrepreneurs from back home, and they want to convert that business in their newcomer life. So what's the financial and the legal aspect of that? How do they establish themselves as entrepreneurs on paper?
See, first thing which is very important, that the moment like somebody thinks of doing a business, and I encourage like everybody to do a business, because there's always good to have two sources of income. So you can always look for a job and you still have enough time, because here the job is only 8 hours and only 5 days, compared to back home where there can be Saturday working too, and sometimes Sunday also half day. So it's always better to start something of your own. Now, legally, you can either work as a sole proprietor or you can have your own incorporation. Now, of course, incorporation is a little bit expensive and it has its own benefits like pros and cons. But even to start with, everybody who wants to do a business can always start as a sole proprietor at least. And that is the cheapest like registration fees. It costs like $75 to $100 kind of registration fees. The bank can even open a business account for you. And this is where the most people make the mistake. They try to keep on putting the business receipts also into personal account, and they mess up everything. And then they go to the accountant and they say, oh, this is completely messed up, but you are the one who did it. So from day one, if you have a separate business account, keep on depositing the receipts, keep on spending the money from that account. And then if you go to bank, even the bank can understand the potential or what's going on. And probably they will be able to help you better, rather than you take a statement where everything is mixed up and you have no track of what was your official expense, what was your personal expense. So these are the two most common advice I give everybody. Register the business. Even if it's a name, your own name, register it. Number two, open a separate bank account. Keep business affairs separate, personal affairs separate. Because when you go to take a mortgage, when you go to take a loan, these statements will help you big time. So clarity is very essential. If you are short in one place, you can always borrow from the other one as a transfer, but you should not mix up your affairs at all.
So what are some of those best practices of ensuring you maintain that clean line between your business expenses and your personal expenses? What can they incorporate from a day-to-day basis?
See, first thing is like, because the moment you have a separate bank account, the bank give you a separate bank card for the business, and then you have your personal Visa or personal bank card. So the most important thing is, even in terms of honesty and prudence, the moment you are spending anything, you have to think yourself that if it's a business expense, pay from business account. If it is a personal expense, you pay from personal account. If you are in doubt, you can still pay from personal account, and later on one can always talk to the accountant and claim it properly. So these are two best practices. You have to keep all your receipts together, so that in case of refund, exchange, or even for CRA purpose, because 6 years is the minimum record keeping practice, government can ask you for those receipts later on. It happens a lot in the beginning. Sometimes any expenses out of line, CRA is going to ask you. most people here don't know that how they are picked up for audit. Now, every business is assigned an industry code, and that industry code is where the CRA keeps track of your spending, and they know that in this industry, this type of expense is not common. The moment you cross the line, even if it is real, you are going to get audited. And when I say audited, it's just they're going to ask you, what did you spend? It's not in a bad spirit. Most people, when they think of audit, their ears stand up and they say, oh, I'm being audited. But they want to know too that where things are going, like what are you spending, which they are not aware. If it is genuine, they are going to adjust their own parameters. But one has to support, because this country runs on numbers. Statistics Canada is working day and night to make sure these numbers are published, because these are used for planning purpose. So these are some of the things one can help.
I like how you've helped connect the dots and taken something so basic and really brought it to the whole national country level. We have a question for you, Manish, from our audience member. Shruti asks, should freelancers register themselves as a business or as a sole proprietorship for taxation purposes? And what are your other tips in this regard?
The first thing is, the sole proprietor is nothing but your own name, unless you have chosen a name for your business. Like sometimes people like to use some name showing the industry, or sometimes they use showing some affinity to certain things. The best and simple thing is to register yourself and obtain a HST number, because some people says, oh, I may not sell 30,000, but then doesn't matter, because HST is nothing but you are collecting on behalf of government. So day one, if you are HST registrant, you can claim, you can charge customer HST, and whatever supplies you buy for your business, you can claim the HST on that. So you are just acting as government's agent. So it's always good to register as a like a sole proprietor, and then always work. It's always good when you file your business tax return through a qualified CPA. These are the practices which will help you. You are not paying too much tax, and they will even guide you that if you didn't claim certain expenses and you still spend them, they will guide you and they will help you claim, so that you can optimize your taxes.
Excellent. Now I want to talk about investing in your future. We spoke about, savings, RSPs, TFSAs. I know, Sandip, you're very passionate about advising people about, saving for your kids and their future and their education. What are some of those government programs that will help people on that path?
I think the most important part is that in Canada there's something called RESPs, Registered Education Savings Plan. Government provides grants on whatever you individually you are putting in, and this is, you can start for a kid, the moment the kid is born, and it generally goes till the age of 18. It's mainly a tool where you can save for your kid's education, and government puts in a grant on top of it. There are different kind of plans in the market which you can look into. There are plans which are group plans. There are plans which are individual plans. Every bank has a plan of its own. So you can talk to your own advisor, to your own bank, to find out what is the best possible way and what you are trying to do. The whole idea is, as early you start, as better it is. As early you start, as small you start, doesn't matter, but you start somewhere, and that's what is the very basic minimum of it. And then other than the RESP plan, then you obviously have all other instruments which are available in Canada for investments, like mutual funds, like other something like a direct investing. There are quite a few number of options available in different platforms, which can also be used, again depending on your appetite. But I would strongly recommend, speak to your advisor, understand what your appetite is, what are you trying to achieve, because it all depends on your age bracket, your risk appetite, what are you looking for, what are you trying to solve for, and then plan it. And one more thing, not just with which I think is also very prudent to do, is you're in a completely new country where you do not really have much support system to build on. So insurance would be again another one which I would, personally speaking, a lot of people miss that out. A lot of people think that's the last priority, but I don't think that's the one. As Kerry was talking about the health piece, because in this country you're on your own. So if something goes wrong, that's the part that you need to cover yourself and your family for first. So health insurance, the health piece is one option that you have, but life insurance would be something which I would definitely recommend people to look into to make sure that you have significant coverages because your family is absolutely on your own, on their own in this country.
Okay. A lot of immigrants in a year or two have, because as a big part of the Canadian dream is to, or the immigrant dream is to have your own home, and they want to get into the market as soon as possible. I know we can't give them specific advice that only certified professionals can, but what is that financial hygiene that they can get on from today to slowly build up to a point where they're able to make a down payment? And are there any government supports that help first-time home buyers?
Manish, you want to take that?
Sure.
Manish, Sandip, anybody?
Basically, real estate is my passion. So thank you for allowing me to speak. Basically, all I tell people that yes, everybody wants to become a homeowner, but I give you my own example. When I came to Canada for first 4 years, I couldn't buy anything because one, lack of courage, second, confusion, where is your job, what are you going to do, how's the wife's job, you don't know the place you want to buy, you're not sure of the community you want to live in, so there's a lot of confusion around. And sometimes if you make a wrong decision, the realtor commission of 5% which will go out on the sale can wipe off your equity. So one has to be really careful. And today the market is not like not like the old days. Everything is in millions. So one has to be very careful. When I came, the cheapest condo you could get is for 100,000. Now 100,000, you don't even get a parking lot. So the world has changed drastically. So I always tell people one has to be very sure, like how much down payment they want to put, what is their affordability. People don't know often the condo has a condo fees. There's a lot of which can go up. There's a lot of elements one has to be aware. So one has to do enough research. And the most important thing is, where do you want to live? Do you want to live nice neighborhood and commute to work, or you want to live close to work and do less commute? So one has to make like a lot of decisions. But the most important thing, the 2 3 things which will work for everybody is save maximum, you have enough down payment, then the bank see less risk, you can get a better interest rate, of course have a good credit report that will help you get better rate, the bank will give you better options. So ultimately it will be your saving, because the interest is part is what you can't control, the whatever rate you are offered you are supposed to pay. So having a good down payment and have a nice credit history will help. Of course, having a good job and decent income always helps. But these are the 2 things which are possible, and it is in our hand. Pay bills on time. Don't take unnecessary credit which you can't afford, because this can jeopardize more. It can make more damage than build the credit. So one also has to be conscious. Sometimes a $3,000 jacket looks amazing, but then when you start paying, then you see, oh my God, every month the credit card is still same place because your income is only so much. So these are some of the habits, if we control, we can all like achieve our dream of having first home. All the best to everybody.
And I think I'll just add to that, Manish, that and just be aware that this is again I'm telling my own experience. Though I bought my first house within the first 9 months that I was here, the reason I had a job, I came with a job and stuff like that. But what surprised us was the ease of doing a transaction like buying a house.
Yeah.
It literally, we signed the agreement and in the evening realized that we had bought a house. It was that kind of a surprise shock. There's something called a buyer's remorse, which is used here very often. And that buyer's remorse kicks in very quickly because you don't even realize that you have bought a house. Our friends were thinking we went out for a coffee and they came to know that we bought a house. and even we didn't understand that we really bought a house. So this is because I was a homeowner back home too, so I know how much pain it took for everything else. But here things are very, very straightforward, simple. If you have done your things right, it is very simple. There's nothing in between the lines. So you should be very aware of it, because a lot of time you get carried away because of that, because you don't understand. And things look so simple that you tend to get stuck down the line. So it would be very interesting. It's something that I thought that from my own experience to share with all of you.
While buying a home is a long-term goal and a lofty goal, and you slowly build up to it, Kerry, in day-to-day life, what are some of those tips and tricks that you give to the people that you counsel, new immigrants? How do they develop those good money habits and spending habits?
I think a lot of times it's through trial and error. It's not something that they really think about. They bring the spending habits from home here, and they may not necessarily be a good match. So I'll give you an example of a woman who came from a very small country, and here our gas stations sell food, right? And it's very expensive because you're stopping by, you're getting gas, and you're grabbing a snack. She thought those were our supermarkets. And so for months, she was buying her family's groceries at the gas station. And it's these types of things, like knowing where to shop and to go to the supermarkets and to the places that are cheaper. You know, some supermarkets are much more expensive than others. A lot of it is trial and error and word of mouth in terms of where the best places are to shop. Thankfully, there are a lot of online forums that will give that type of advice, not just to newcomers, but to everybody. If you search, Canadian money saving forums, you should be able to find some, and you can just ask your questions there. Where can I find the cheapest, school supplies or whatever it is? And people should be able to answer you that way.
So we're in the last 15 minutes of our session, and I want to quickly take wrap up conclusion comments from everybody, starting with Sandip. In your years here as an immigrant and now a Canadian, what is that one big money lesson that you've learned that you'd like to share with our viewers?
I think, as I said, nothing is small. It is all about starting the habit of savings. Is what is the most important piece. You can get carried away because in this country, spending $50,000 in 3 days, 4 days is not a big deal. So you don't really understand. Giving smaller things the respect is what is more important. Because as this country gives respect to every kind of work, every kind of job, every dollar that you earn is important. And every dollar that you save takes you for a very long way, because you don't have the network that you had back home. You don't have the support system that you had back home. So it is all on you and your family. So remember that every single small step adds up. And I think that's the most important piece that I carry even today for myself. Because I feel that was the biggest learning that I saw myself, and being a banker.
Yeah, because a lot of immigrants come from cash-based economies, and just making all payments with a credit card you can almost never realize how much you spend. So brew your coffee at home and don't buy it every day from the coffee shop.
It becomes very simple and easy, right? You don't feel you're not when buying a house is so simple. Everything is simple, right? It is very straightforward, and that's why you don't get to know that what you're spending. That's the reason why it's so important that you keep a watch on that, but also try to get the savings habit in place.
Wonderful. Manish, coming to you, your big money lesson or money advice to our viewers.
See, as I said in the beginning, one always has to look for two income. It should be like everybody can have a passion. Somebody can have a stock trading. Somebody can always do like freelancing work. Somebody can do their hobby as a employment. The whole idea is that not to kill the time and like make the most of it. Of course, you have to enjoy. So even if you take extra work on one Saturday or one Sunday, one has to work. And you never know what, sometimes the business can outshine and you don't need your job, or you realize that this is not for you. But only when you make that effort, you will know like what's happening. And the sooner you, as Sandeep said, the sooner you set your foot, you buy your home, you realize that what is good for you. If you buy a condo, then you can think of a townhome or detach later. But one has to keep making that effort. Otherwise, you are missing the bus. And sometimes you're watching from far, like what's happening. And then after a few like years, you say, "Oh, I'm not settled in Canada." But it's not Canada. It's just our own efforts which reflect. So we have to do our best and keep on learning. I'm learning, still learning. This conference has been extremely like refreshing. So all the best to everyone.
And Kerry, lastly to you, what is that one thing that often comes up in your conversations with immigrants? What do you always tell them?
In terms of spending,
And their financial habits.
spending and finances. Really, I think the biggest thing to keep in mind is everything is not going to happen at once. It's a process, and you're building a new life. And you have to remember how long it took you to build your life in your home country, and come with the realistic expectation that you're going to have to do some more building again when you're starting fresh. And so you don't need the best of everything at the beginning. You're not going to know everything. You're going to make mistakes in terms of spending and things like that. And the best way to avoid those is to do your research. Google is a great source for reviews for different businesses, so you make sure you're using a legitimate business. And with online shopping, you can compare pricing from different stores, and there are huge differences in price from one store to another. So for example, for myself, I love shopping on Amazon, but it doesn't always have the cheapest price. So I'll go on there, I'll find an item that I want, and then I'll Google that brand and that item and see what comes up and see if I can get myself a better deal. And I don't do it just for big ticket items, but I do it for smaller ones as well. And in the process, I think I save thousands of dollars every year. And that's money that can be put towards investing or towards having a higher lifestyle here. So really just be patient and take your time and do your research for every purchase until you get used to the Canadian marketplace.
I think the common message today has been that every small step, every $1 that you spend counts. And don't ignore the power of compound growth and compound savings, and that there's so much education out there that there are options for you to make those informed choices and make sure that your financial life here in Canada is secure. Sandip, Kerry, and Manish, thank you so much for joining us and giving us your time. It was a pleasure and so insightful, and I'm sure our guests also feel the same, our viewers feel the same. Thank you for your time. And so you were watching Café New Canadians, brought to you by New Canadians. Very happy to have you join us. And in coming weeks and every week, we come to you with new topics. Write to us with our hashtag We Are New Canadians. Follow us on our various social media platforms and let us know what you'd like us to cover, what topics and what kind of experts you'd like us to bring on our show. We are also there on LinkedIn, on Telegram, on Instagram, on Facebook, all of those platforms. And that's a wrap on today's show. One quick note, we are holding a giveaway from Clearly Speaking. All attendees of sessions that we conduct during the month of November will enter a lucky draw to win one of three $350 value packages by Clearly Speaking. They offer training and coaching in soft skills, networking, public speaking, and so much more. So that's pretty interesting, and I'm quite interested in that as well. So that's the Clearly Speaking giveaway. And of course, subscribe to our newsletter, newcanadians.tv/newsletter, to get all the monthly latest content in your inbox. And that's us on Facebook. And as you leave the Zoom chat, the Zoom meeting, please fill in the survey and let us know whether you like today's session and what you'd like to hear more from us.